Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results. Hi, I'm Perry Holly, a Maxwell Leadership facilitator and coach.
And I'm Chris Cody, Executive Vice President with Maxwell Leadership. Welcome and thank you for joining. I want to encourage you to go to maxwellleadership.com/podcast. And there you can click on this episode. You can fill out a form, and we would love to follow back up with you, whether it's for some training, some consulting, or even coaching around 5 levels of leadership, 360-degree leader. Any of John's content we've turned into corporate training. We'd love to be able to serve you personally and or your team. Well, today's topic is titled Storytelling for Leaders.
Yes,
this is a fun topic. This is a topic that Perry is extremely gifted at. And I know that you use stories a ton, and we'll share some of that throughout today's lesson. But tell us about the importance of this topic and why now? Why do we need to talk about it?
I'm coming up against, so it's part of our communication training, but our brains, human brains, are story machines, not facts and data machines. We respond and react and resonate more with a story, something that I like it for stickiness. And just if I'm trying to make a point, can I give you something that makes it sticky that you'll remember it more later on? And I just think as a communicator, the more you can engage people in the conversation and use story, it will resonate more with them. I did have a coaching call recently I was sharing with you before the mics came on that this guy was so frustrated with his team, and we've been in this coaching, and he'd gotten a little trouble by being frustrated with the team. And he made this comment. He goes, "It's like they don't even know that I was in their role. I know I've been in their role." I said, "Have you ever told that story of how you got that job, how you got that role, and how you got to where you are today?" He goes, "No, I don't do story. I just tell them, the facts." I said, "Well, that's kind of the point, is that if you could put this into a story that they could relate to and resonate more with you, do you think that would increase your influence with them? And, I never thought about, how hard this role is. You've been here, and tell them the lessons." And he goes, "Oh, okay." So we're working on how can he become a storyteller.
I love that because, stories, they make things real. They make things attainable for others that are around you when they hear your story, when they know either you've been where I have been or you understand the path of where I'm going and you take them on that journey. It brings it to life is really why I like using them. And then, I've led sales teams and been part of sales organizations, and you always hear the phrase, stories and statistics sell. And as a leader of people, you don't want to be telling people. Selling may be a little bit of a strong word as well, but you got to be communicating in a way to where they're picking up what you're putting down. And the way to do that is through storytelling.
I don't think anybody disagrees this is a good idea, but they don't know how to do. How do I make where does a story fit into a business context? You and I are having a conversation. I get it. You're on stage, you're going to tell a story because you're trying to engage the audience. Well, it's kind of the same thing, but I need my story to be a little more focused on what my team or the individual is dealing with. And so, if I can do that, it really helps me to stand out and really in a good way. It captures attention. It builds relationships. People buy into you. They're more attentive. They're more engaged because, like I said, our brains are story machines. They're not logic machines. And people just respond better if you can get them engaged in a story about you, perhaps, that involves them.
Now, I want to throw a caution out there because I want to make sure that you practice the story, you work through it, because sometimes, I know this happened to me, I have a story in my head and I may not practice it or think through it, and I go to share it and I have everybody looking at me like,
what's that got to do with anything?
What is he talking about? And the reason I say that is that, if your story doesn't follow a logical order, which I like that word because I'm very logical, and they can't follow it and they can't understand it, they're going to be even more confused and they're going to relate to you even less than before you told the story. So make sure to improve your communication. Yes, let's use stories, but let's make sure we think through it first, because the opposite can happen. It can actually create more confusion for you if it doesn't follow a logical order.
Hey, podcast listeners. Many of you listening right now would probably love the autonomy that comes with owning your own business or becoming a coach that helps other businesses succeed. Well, we have a phenomenal strategy where you are 100% in control of your own business, earning income on your own terms, and have access to the people, tools, and resources you need to build a thriving leadership development business. When you become a Maxwell Leadership Certified team member, you join a global community of entrepreneurs led by our expert team of mentors and faculty, including John C. Maxwell. You'll also get one of the top leadership certifications in the world next to your name, giving you the boost you need to get started. Visit us online at maxwellleadership.com/join the team to find out more.
So if you're game, I'd like to walk through how story works and maybe just do a back and forth with me and you. And then I know we've talked about this subject in the way back on the podcast. So if someone's hearing this, you think you resonate with it, you've heard it before, you may have. But I want to make it more practical about how you as a leader can actually build story into your communication so people engage at a higher level. And so I'm a big fan of Donald Miller, and we've taught some of his stuff before. But Donald Miller has Story Builders is his company, and they talk about this quite a bit. So I just adopted his strategy or his structure for a story. This will ruin you if every movie if you go home tonight and watch a movie, you'll say, hey, let me tell you what's going to happen next, because this will ruin you. All Hollywood movies are probably laid out on this exact structure, and it starts with that every story has a hero. Mm-hmm. And leaders, I'm going to tell you, this is where it comes off the rails kind of early here, is most of us struggle with identifying who is the hero of the story. So the example I've used before, and I'll just use it because most people resonate, although I used it in a workshop a few weeks ago, and somebody said, I've never seen Star Wars. I thought, well, we're going to stop right now and watch Star Wars. But Star Wars, the original first movie, who's the hero of Star Wars, the first movie?
Okay, so I need to admit something. I have watched Star Wars, but I'm not as big a fan as Perry is. So he's given me some notes. So if the answers are wrong, it's Perry's fault. But the hero of Star Wars is Luke Skywalker.
Very good. And so that's probably most people would have gotten that. Yeah. But here's what you need to know about who the hero is of the story, is that the hero is usually the person who has a problem, has a challenge, has a struggle. And so when you're thinking about, you and your team and you and the client, you and the service person, who's got the challenge? So usually the challenge can come, Donald Miller would teach in three flavors. An external challenge. What's the external challenge of Star Wars? What is Luke facing externally?
Well, that would obviously be Darth Vader. The Death Star. That
it's looming very obviously there. But then most heroes also have an internal problem. Yeah. So what would Luke's internal problem be?
He doesn't believe he's a Jedi, so he doesn't have what it takes.
He's struggling. Why are you telling me I'm just a kid running around on a planet with a sword? I'm not a Jedi to do that. But he also, the third thing that Donald Miller would say, you have probably a philosophical problem, and most great stories have this. And what would the philosophical problem of Star Wars be?
The bigger philosophical problem they face is the battle between good and evil.
Super. So you got the idea. So we're trying to decide, first of all, the story, who's the hero is usually the person with the problem. It could be in three formats: external, internal, or philosophical. So if I change this really quickly to say, think about yourself and your team, or yourself and the client or the customer. Let's just take the team. Who's the hero of the story? If you were telling a story about you and your team, who's the hero of the story?
The team would be, right? They're the ones that have the challenge.
And so this is where we come off the rails usually with story, is that we tend to think we're the hero.
Yeah.
That I'm here with the customer. I'm coming in to save the day. I'm coming in with the team. I'm coming in to save the day. No, the customer has the challenge. The team has the challenge. You're not the hero. They're the hero. So what does that make you? And so if you continue with story, as Donald Miller lays it out, that every story has a hero, they have a problem, but then that problem is every story has a guide, and the guide has a plan that's going to help the hero overcome the challenges. So if you went with me back to Star Wars, who's the guide in Star Wars?
That would be Obi-Wan Kenobi.
And what is Obi-Wan's plan for young Luke? And and what's Luke's challenge is he doesn't think he has what it takes. I'm not a Jedi. What does Obi-Wan think about he should do? What's his plan for Luke?
So he's going to introduce Luke then to Yoda, who will overcome the challenge of belief in the belief he has in himself in becoming a Jedi.
Fantastic. So you're on this. So let's go
All
back
right.
to the story of our team. Is your team is struggling with some challenge. The guide is going to have this plan with a call to action. So if you go back to dealing with your team or your client or your kids, you need, part of your story is that you're not the hero, you're the guide.
Right.
How are you going to help them to solve the problem? And you think of something that's happened. So what was one of Obi-Wan's call to action for Luke?
To take the fight to the Empire. So instead of waiting on them to come to him, or as a leader in this age, come to you, then you're going to lose, right? And the outcome will either be triumph over the Empire or avoid being crushed by the Empire.
And that's the great thing about your story. You should always have, what is the outcome of the story? Is going to be one or both of these, is that you're going to help them succeed or avoid failure. And so whatever your team or customer is dealing with, and you're telling the story where you're the guide to their hero with their challenges, how am I going to give them an action plan that avoids disaster or embraces success? That makes sense?
It does. It does. So real quick. So in this situation, just for clarity on the team side, the leader, right, should make sure that you consider the problem, the team or the client, as you mentioned earlier, we went team, that the problem that they're facing themselves as the guide with a plan to help the hero.
Fantastic. So let's give an example.
Yeah.
So I had a team and they were struggling. This is a true story. They had been very, very successful. And all of a sudden they're struggling with the environment change, conditions change, markets change. Some changes were going on, and my team was very frustrated. They had a lot of challenges, and so I want to call them, really my outcome. What I'm thinking about is I want them to overcome. Everything's not great all the time. I want you to continue to work hard no matter what's going on and continue to overcome these challenges. And so I would tell a story. I'm thinking about. They're my hero. They have a challenge. I'm the guide. I have a plan. So here's the story I would tell. I say, it reminds me of a time when I wrote a book and I put my book out, and I asked for some reviews from some people that gave me recommendations. I sent them a book, and of course, everybody I gave a book to was 5-star, 5-star, 5-star. And one day I'm looking at Amazon and I get a 4-star review. And it's from one of my favorite bosses, a guy that I'd worked for, and who I have a great relationship, and he actually helped me more in my career ever. And I said, John, well, why'd you give me a 4-star review? And couldn't you see I had all? So he goes, Perry, are you really a 5-star author? I go, well, I can't. It's hard to answer. Well, yeah, I think. Well, could you be better? I could be better. Could you overcome, some of the challenges of writing what you've learned? Could you be a better author? Could you is there another level for you? Yeah. He goes, then what's the big deal about a 4-star? I'm just telling you, I'm giving you the message that somebody else probably should have given you was, I think you can do more. I think you can overcome these challenges, and I think you can do better. And so I call it my 4-star review story is that when I'm thinking I'm pretty good, I'm pretty successful at what I'm doing, he's telling me you can go to the next level. And when I'm looking at my team and I'm saying, we can go to the next level. There's challenges, there's all kinds of things around us, but there's a next level.
Yeah.
And they go, yeah, boss, we got that to do that. So
becomes a rallying cry for them. I know one that in similar tone to that I have used in the past, where we've had a team that came off a tremendous year as we closed out the year, and you can begin at times as the new year sets in to see maybe potentially some complacency could take hold. And so I've shared this story as well about in the past with my son and the journey of his athletic career, where early on, and I take him through the journey of saying, hey man, like early on, even down in Pop Warner, right? Sports came very easy to him very early in life. He exceeded expectations back then, whatever expectations are in Pop Warner. But then it began to show up in high school as well. And I saw where he began to have to work a little bit harder, that he went and didn't become complacent. Then he got into college. And even there, where you look at it and you go, man, at that level, there are a lot of talented football players that are out there, right? So what is the thing that is going to keep him from being complacent and getting left behind? And what is that hard work? And I watched him begin to understand that even though he's talented, that's not enough, right? He's got to work harder. And so he would do that at each phase of accomplishment. And so that never sat in that he had that complacency from the previous accomplishment. So, I mean, the same is true with our teams, right? For us as a sales organization, a sales team, whatever, we need to continue to outwork, to work hard and improve our ability to serve our clients versus resting on the fact that, oh, I was a good Pop Warner player. I was a good high school player. And you got to continue to put that work in.
I love it. You've got the hang of it.
All right.
So,
okay.
Just knowing that you're not the hero, you know, whoever has the problem is the hero, and that you're the guide to help them come with a plan and then relate it, just like you did. You related to something personal that you can relate to. I related to something personal I can relate to. It could be something you read. It could be something you've heard of, but you're saying, oh, it reminds me of a time. And you just really get your team engaged in the aspect of you're trying to help bring them a call to action, a plan that'll help them win and succeed or avoid disaster.
Yeah. So as I wrap up, I love this because we talk about the ability to connect with people is the foundation for your leadership. This is a great way to connect. Now, what Perry's saying is we're not going to lead with a story every time we have a conversation, right? Like, oh, here comes another story from Perry. But the way that he laid it out and how learned it from Donald Miller and gave some examples today, like there is a story in you and with your team for a lot of your situations. And the more you can tell that story that leads to change, that leads to keeping them from complacency, whatever it might be, they're going to buy in. And it reminds me back to the law of the buy-in right away. It's like, okay, they're going to buy into you as a leader before they buy into not being complacent next year. So how are they going to do that? Well, they're only going to buy in when they relate to you, when they connect to you. So we just want to encourage you as you strive to continue to grow and increase your influence as a leader. Use storytelling in a way to be able to do that, and it'll change the influence that you have with your team.
And it's a great way to introduce vulnerability into your relationship with your team by telling your story, how you made your way up, and what are some of the setbacks, and what are some of the mistakes. And as you tell these stories, people start to see you as a more authentic, real, genuine person that I really want to be connected with to do that. So
that's good.
Thank you, Chris. And just a reminder, if you'd like more information, the Learner's Guide, or hear more about our offerings or the other podcasts in our family, you can do all that at maxwellleadership.com/podcast. You can also leave us a question or a comment. We love hearing from you. We're very grateful you'd spend this time with us. That's all today from the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast.
Are you ready to elevate your leadership to new heights? Join the movement towards High Road Leadership with John C. Maxwell's latest book. In High Road Leadership, John explores the power of valuing all people, doing the right things for the right reasons, and placing others above personal agendas. Learn how to inspire positive change and bring people together in a world that divides. Order now and receive exclusive bonuses, including a keynote on High Road Leadership by John Maxwell himself, and a sneak peek into 3 impactful chapters. Take the first step towards becoming a high road leader. Visit highroadleadershipbook.com to order your copy today.